Hello and welcome to this week's review on the My Hero Academia Vigilantes anime, and this week we're reviewing the episode titled Crabtastic Rampage, and we kick off this review, as we always do with these reviews, by talking about the positives and the headline positives. I enjoyed the humour and tone throughout this episode. I loved the display of power by the delivery man, and I'm thankful with how efficiently this episode was told. I know that last point might feel like damning with faint praise, but we'll get on to that shortly. Now, this is an episode that is very much a strong mix of action and comedy, and I think it does both of them very well. In fairness, this is not the funniest episode that there's been, nor is it the most action-packed, but it is able to do both these things in a way which it doesn't feel as though one is stealing oxygen from the other. The humour doesn't feel like it's undermining the action, and the action doesn't feel like it's undermining the humour. Even though it does feel as though we've got two very different stories happening at once, with two very different tones, they don't feel like they're clashing against one another, and it doesn't feel like there's some kind of attempt at juxtaposition. No, we end up getting something that does create a very solid and very enjoyable episode. It is able to execute all its elements brilliantly. The humour is something that we're all familiar with, and it plays into the kind of style that we know from this series and the main series itself. The big question for me was how they do the action, because having read the manga, I knew what the jokes were going to be before they came along. I was just always wondered how they do the action. And again, we will talk about that shortly. Just a quick heads up, of course, we are in January. This is a terrible time for people making YouTube videos. Viewership drops off, and YouTube's doing very weird things at the moment. So if you want more reviews from me, if you want to keep up to date with the reviews that I do, be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTube stuff that YouTube wants you to. YouTube, you know what it's like. Support your local small content creator today. It will do them a power of good. But back to the review. For me, a lot of this episode was always a case of how they were going to execute certain elements of it. I was desperate for having a decent explanation as to how the distribution network would work, and thankfully we ended up getting that, and we got it fairly early on. I will admit it's more speculative on their part, but at least we have something to go off. And again, it's able to balance all these elements very well. The crime, the superhero stuff, and the comedy, it all puts itself together to create a nice, well-worn carpet of an episode. No, tapestry. A tapestry is a more spectacular thing. It does all of it well. The humour and character and situation based. A lot of it is based off reaction shots. A lot of it is just given how absurd the situation keeps building up and building up. Manga, I think, did it better, but that's mostly just to how it's paced out. Like, you're having to wait a week or a fortnight over each one, so it all feels as though the whole thing is just getting worse and worse and worse and worse for our characters, which I think works better given what's happening in the episode itself. And the reaction shots themselves are great with what they are. There's still the bit in the episode where Fat Gum, he's absorbed all the explosive energy for it, and he has a look on his face that just, again, made me think, look out everybody, he's gonna poo! It was well put together, spectacular, very brilliantly well done. I just love it. This whole episode, it is able to balance the sparky, bouncier tone with some of the more serious stuff that we end up going into this episode. The superhero frolics that we get work very well. We have Crawler's little Popeye moment where it's like, oh boy, if only I packed my hoodie, if only I had my all-might hoodie, then I'd have the power to do what was needed. Oh, but look at this, he's got one, so now he can save the day. That's his spinach. That's his super power boost thing. Other characters, they have quirks, they have one for all, they have Super Saiyan, he has merchandise, and I just love that aspect of it. We got Crab Cop's snipper ability, which they started off with just, she has to snip it with her hands, but also she can snip it with her legs. And it goes a bit with Fat Gum absorbing the explosion. Great stuff, just brilliantly wonderful, enjoyable, goofy, silly stuff that I do enjoy, and this all wraps up this little mini arc very effectively well, and helps to set up for the new spin-off series, My Hero Academia Supermarket Promotional Team!
Customers first, it's customers first.
Mister, not so fast.
What's wrong?
You see the sign?
So what?
Well, can you read it?
Don't you?
You're not allowed in this lane.
Hey,
It's
what are you
10
doing?
items or less.
The big takeaway with this episode, the one that was supposed to take with us into future episodes, is the proper exploration and demonstration as to how the delivery man's powers work. I know that for people that have read the manga, that's not the actual name, but that's the name that I used at this point when I was reading the manga during my reviews, and until their name and identity is reviewed, we will use that in the reviews, the delivery man. This is the big episode that we end up getting a better idea as to how his quirk and ability works. With the anime, we've had it hinted in the past. We certainly had it towards the end of last year's series, I think it was, where I think it's in the last episode we just see him disappearing very quickly. I will admit I wasn't a big fan of that because I think it just takes away just the shock value of what he can do. I think that if you are going to introduce a character like that far earlier into the story than they did in the manga, I think that you need to make more of an effort to keep them and their abilities and their powers more of a secret. But hey, this is the week that we end up getting the full reveal of it and the full demonstration as what his powers and ability is. He is a speedster. He has a super speed quirk. He can move super duper fast. I know that I sound like an idiot trying to explain it like that, but that's literally, he's a speedster. He moves so fast, everyone else slows down. This is a well-worn trope within superhero fiction over the past 10-15 years, and we all know how it works. The super speed character runs so fast, lightning's coming off them, and everyone else either moves very slowly or they're just frozen in place. The neat thing as to how they do it here, though, is that everything else around him just looks like something of a VHS. Looks like it's something that's being played on a CRT television. Like, he's moving so fast, his movement is so advanced that it makes everyone else just look so slow and antiquated. And as I mentioned earlier in the review, this was one of the things I was always interested to see how they would end up doing it. Because in the manga, there's no great stylistic flair as to how he's doing it. He just uses it. And whilst it is interesting, and whilst it is dynamic and it is spectacular within the manga, there isn't this level of stylistic flair here. This is the kind of stylistic flair that you can only get in an anime adaptation, and it makes that moment a lot more terrifying, but also a lot more visually interesting. It's not just a simple case of, oh, everyone around him has turned black and white, or everyone just moving really slowly, or they're frozen in space. No, you get a sense of just how fast he is, just how superior his movement is compared to everyone else, and then you just have that montage of misery as he's just taking officers' guns off them and just shooting them point blank. I will admit that they do go out of their way to end up saying, oh, they're only rubber bullets, so it's not going to kill them, but boy, it's going to hurt, which, okay, I get it, and I'm fairly certain they had that in the manga as well. Sure, you don't want your villain to be a total psychopath, but it does, I suppose the argument in favour of it is that it shows he's more sadistic, that he isn't going to the extent of just killing them, he wants to make them suffer and feel the kind of pain and injury that he ends up feeling when he ends up getting shot in the leg, or shot through the leg, I should say. And all of that stuff is great. It shows us a distinct villain with a superpower just being demonstrated to us very well. That's something that we didn't get with Bee. Her powers and the full potential of it was never really shown ahead of time, and even when we did see her fight, it wasn't really explored to the same extent. Here, that isn't the case. Now, there is a part of me that does fear that this leans into the issue that I have with My Hero Academia, both this and the main series. We're going to lean a little bit too into the shonen, anime, shonen, manga thing of just over-the-top action set pieces. We'll see where we end up going with that, how that'll end up washing out as time ends up going by. But hey, just for the time being at least, I'm here for it. I love what we end up seeing here. It ends up really just debuting this character properly to us. It's only really about at this point in the series, in the manga, that we actually got to see him. There was a little hint of him towards the end of what was their season 1, as they say, but this is the moment where they just properly appear for the first time. This is the first time we get a sense of who and what they are and how they play into all of it. And the fact his scar glows and the fact he can switch off is something I didn't know, because it isn't really necessarily obvious in the manga, but still a great little bit of stylistic flair. I do enjoy where I end up getting with this. The final point of praise I will end up giving this one, and again, I know this is going to sound like damning with faint praise, but I respect how efficiently it told all of this. When I was reading this in the manga, it did start to feel like it was overstaying its welcome ever so slightly, and we were at the point of, okay, I need to put in funny gags and stuff to keep myself a little bit more entertained with all of this, but there was also the issue, as I've alluded to previously, that the whole aspect of the distribution network for Trigger, for me, was never properly explained. Because the way that they presented it was, oh, there's a deal going down. Okay, so there's going to be someone here that they're going to have to find who's orchestrating all of this, and it's going to be in some cloudy room where money's going to be changing hands. That wasn't the case. Oh, well, there must be one of these companies working with these people. That wasn't the case. Oh, maybe one of these companies is... No, that wasn't the case. Here we end up being speculative, but it at least gives us an idea as to how it works. That being that effectively these deliveries are just being hijacked. It's an extra box here and there that the people working for these companies isn't going to notice. Oh, well, they might notice it because of the sheer number. Oh, we got 31, and they're supposed to be 31, but they won't know that the actual order was only for 30 or for 28 or what have you. And I like that aspect of it. It does feel as though there's a better attempt here to try and explain the criminality of this. I was going to say mundane villainy, but no, it's just sheer criminality. And that's an aspect of this series, of Vigilantes, that I do enjoy, that whilst it is still over-the-top superhero action with funny-looking characters and funny-looking abilities, it at least still keeps its feet on the ground in some areas, and it is attempting to explain and to present an element of just criminality here on a very ground level. I will admit that thus far, what I've read of the series thus far, I don't think it goes quite to the same extent as I would personally like to, but at least when we have stuff like this, it feels as though the villains' actions, whomever they end up being and whomever they're connected to, it does feel as though there's more of a deliberate attempt of trying to do something, to build something, to create something that extends out beyond just this story. Something that feels as though it does, one way or another, feed its way into the main series. That what we're seeing here is the inertial steps of something, whether this is connected to All for One, or the Triads, or the Yakuza, or whomever. This is an attempt to build out the criminality of this world, so it isn't just a bunch of people in colourful costumes going up and smashing up the local off-licence and going nyah, 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 as often the side character villainy stuff that we'd end up seeing in the main series was. This brings a more mundane aspect to it that I can respect, and it's done in a way which doesn't feel so out of the ordinary. There is a sense of just normalcy with a lot of this, which is kind of bizarre to say when you have a character that's superpower is morbid obesity. Just this sense of it's very small scale heroics in the grand scheme of things. It's not people going a level beyond, throwing buildings at one another. It's a runaway robot in a shopping centre at a convention for supermarkets. I like it. I like all that stuff. I do wish that they'd gone into that kind of stuff a little bit more. As I mentioned last week, it is odd that Popstep is sent to be a mascot for the supermarket that she works for, and yet the supermarket has no presence at the event whatsoever. Like, I know that it's not the biggest plot hole in the entire series, but it just feels a little bit strange to me that that is an element that just was never explored or really gone into at all. Like, it's like, just like, maybe the excuse is that she wasn't there on behalf of the company, she was there so that she could make connections, so that she could be part of another company, or to build out stuff more, because it's not like she was on stage singing a song about the low-cost baked beans at whatever supermarket she's the promotion and team for, but whatever, it's fine. It's enjoyable, it's all efficiently told. It tells its story succinctly, it gets it all done properly, and I do respect that. With that said, let us get into the negatives. And I know that this is a shorter review, but this is an episode that's mostly focused around one major action sequence, and that itself is short. With that said, however, as far as negatives are concerned, I think that the pre-title reminder stuff went on a bit too long. I think they've done it more efficiently in the past, and the only good thing that really came out of that for me was the speculation as to how the distribution network works, because as I said, and was an issue for me when I was reading the manga, it never felt as though there was anything really concrete to latch onto. It was just so speculative that it was hard to really get much of a grasp on anything. Now, granted, I do watch a lot of crime dramas, and as such, you get a better aspect as to how things work and all that in those, and you're not going to get it in a series like this, but you at least needed something. And whilst I'm thankful that we did get that, there's still a lot of fluff of, oh look, we're going to Osaka, oh look, it's Fatgum, oh look, it's this thing, oh look, it's that thing. We know. And there's a more efficient way in doing this. You've done this kind of stuff in the past. You didn't need to do a truncated version, a bridge version of the previous episode. I don't think it was necessary. The other issue that I have, and I think this is more of a major issue, is that it does feel as though you almost have two different programs going on at once. Now, as I mentioned previously, I do think this episode is able to branch the very different tones and set pieces very well. It's able to do the more serious action superhero stuff as well as the more goofy over the top stuff. It does both of them well, and I think it's able to bridge them both well and have them harmonise very well. My issue is that even with that in mind, it still feels as though there's two very different programs getting on here. That you have the stuff with Crawler and Popstep and Fat Gum and the shenanigans with the crab robot thing, and on the other hand you have the crime drama stuff with the delivery man and the detective and all that stuff. There's no overlap with either of these, really. I mean, there is, because of the fact that he's responsible for the robots going crazy, and that the two characters, Fat Gum and the Crab Cop lady, end up coming over to help save the day with Popstep. But it still feels as though these two worlds are very separate. It does feel to me as though it really should have been the case of that Popstep or Crawler stumbled upon in all this. They stepped into nasty business, as I think one of the manga titles for this particular storyline was. It should have been one of them getting involved with this or discovering something, and that's how things escalated. As right now, it feels as though you've got two very different worlds and two very different stories going on. And the fact our main character has yet to meet one of the main villains at this point in the story. Sure, we're still very early into all of this, but at the same time, it feels odd that they just got involved with all of this by happenstance almost, and that their involvement in the events here borderlines feeling like the player character in the Dragon Ball Xenoverse games, or any kind of video game where you get to create characters and relive parts in a series. That, oh, we can't have them altering the main series of events, so they're just at the side. It's like the Bourne Legacy thing, where you got, oh, did you ever wonder what was happening in the alleyway when they were having that big parkour sequence on the roof? No? Well, you're going to find out. There was another super spy as well, and he was on the run at the exact same time that Jason Bourne was, and it kind of feels like that. Oh, what's our original characters doing? They're just kind of bumming around and going to stalls, and oh no, one of them's been kidnapped. Ooh, and they're teaming up with some canon characters. Ooh, don't you feel involved? Like, it's not a major issue, and as we pivot into the overview, I do enjoy this episode. I do think this is a great episode. But it just feels like, I suppose any issues I have are just issues I have with the story as written, as with the manga itself. That there are aspects of this that don't work. I don't get the decision to not involve our main characters in the main drama more here, but that's something that may or may not change as we end up going forward this particular season. But what we do get here is still fun and enjoyable. It's silly, it's over the top, it's wacky at times, and it has this just kind of goofy flair that I enjoy this series, and I can't fault it for that. With all that said and done, however, let's get into Comment Corner! It's time for Comment Corner, and YouTube once again did not message me to let me know that I got a comment on the previous video, so I apologise for the late replies. With that said, however, we got BX1 who says, I forgot this was coming out today. This is of course referring to the debut episode of this season, Day Tripping Down to Ninwa. It was a good version of the manga, though it feels strange that this part of the story will be over next week. When I read it in the manga a few years back, it felt like it dragged on and on. Thank you for your comment, and I do feel, like I mentioned it earlier in the episode, I do feel it went on a little bit, but this is just a general part of the story where it felt as though things were dragging a bit for me, but it all turned out well in the end. Right aspects of the plot notwithstanding, I still think this is a very solid episode. Let me know what you all thought about this one down in the comment section down below. Be sure to do all the YouTube stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Let me know if you love this one, let me know if you hate it. Thank you all for listening, thank you all for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you, and see you next time. Goodbye!
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to
to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!